My name is Era, and I'm the host of the Tamil Creator Podcast. I chat with creators from all over the world to share their stories and discuss hot topics in a way that I hope inspires, educates, and entertains you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Tamil Creator. I'm your host, Era. Today, I have probably the most special guest because he's a really good friend of mine. He's known me for the longest. You guys have heard the episode with Kumutha by this time, but this guest's name is Vas Saranga. Some of you might have read the article on tamilculture.com, but he's an actor. He's had a ton of roles on different projects, including Aaron Stone, American Pie Presents Beta House, Orphan Black, and The Handmaid's Tale, and there's a bunch of other stuff he's working on as well. He's also got a brother, Varun Saranga, who's an actor in his own right, and it's super rare to kind of find siblings, especially that are Tamil, to kind of experience success in a space where you see very few South Asians. So I'm very excited to kind of introduce him. And also, he actually launched a side hustle, which is turning into a bigger hustle, called The Online Actor, where he actually teaches people that aspire to be actors online, as the name kind of suggests. So, and he's one of the few people that has known me since the days of, Tamil Nelly, as kind of you heard me in the Kamutha episode, or that still, still know the reference of Era Vintan, because anybody post university only knows me as Era. So this guy's known me for a long time. He's got a lot of funny stories probably about me. So you'll probably get to hear a bit more about me personally. So again, I'll let Vas Saranga introduce himself, talk about kind of his upbringing, who he is, and kind of how that sparked kind of this path that he's on, which is actor/entrepreneur. So Vas, take it away.
Thank you, Era, for that amazing welcome. And I think, I'm not sure if you actually said it, but I get the title of best friend.
Yes, you do.
You said something very colorful, which was like the most specialist guest who have ever graced the thing. And I was like, when's this dude gonna say best friend? Right? Yeah. And I know Claudia, your wife, will be like, why didn't you say best friend? Right? It's your best friend. Yeah, thanks for that awesome welcome. Super excited to be here. Like Era, I'm also a man of many names and many different pronunciations. So like with Era, like your Era, your Ara, your Era Vintan, you were even Vintan at one point, right? It depends on who you were talking to. And then like for acting, I go by Vas. With you, I'm Vas. With a Z actually, Vas, right? Yeah. And then
and buddy.
Yeah, and then buddy, and then there's one guy actually once said, Vas, can I call you Vase? And I'm like, where do you know? You can't call me Vase, right? Don't take it any further than people have already taken it, right? So also a man of many names with a 3-letter name. Happy to be part of that club too with you, Era. Yeah, super excited to dive right in and talk art and creativity and entrepreneurship.
So yeah, maybe tell, obviously I know your story. You're like, you have 2 siblings and obviously another, famous actor sibling as well, and your brother, Varun. How did this upbringing, because, you grew up I would say your parents are a bit more in terms of traditional hopes for you in terms of you becoming an engineer, but you ended up being an actor and kind of getting into film and writing and now starting a business around acting. So how did your upbringing affect who you are today? Maybe bring that up a bit.
Definitely added like a huge comedic factor to because you hear the it's South Asian but also Tamil, the doctor, lawyer, engineer,
yes,
and then like accountant is like a number 4, and even though it's prestigious, and then you go down the list, and actor is like the non-existent on that list, right? Even though South Asian people, Tamil people love watching movies, and they have this huge movie culture, they have their own language films, and yeah, so it definitely made things more difficult with the traditional upbringing, but also made success that much sweeter and the journey that much funnier, I think, like in terms of being able to talk about it and reflect on it. There's more humor, and maybe not funny, maybe it's more like dark humor. Thinking of arguing with your parents to convince them that or convince my parents that I can be an actor. But where the comedy really lies in that whole thing is how I'm one of 3 siblings, okay, and I'm the oldest, and then I have a sister and brother, as you mentioned, and they wanted doctor. My parents hoped for us to have the trifecta of doctor, lawyer, engineer. Now my sister is a doctor. I was in engineering for 1 year with you,
Yes.
and and my brother was a pre-law, or he was going to be law, and he was in poli sci, and that was going to be doctor, lawyer, engineer, and it ended up being my sister became the doctor, and then they got two actors who left their other professions to, or their paths to or our paths to become actors and writers and directors and filmmakers and all that kind of stuff. So I would say it gave us it gave us a bit of a later start, I think, but maybe more drive to actually make it happen, because we really knew that's what we wanted to do. It wasn't like, oh, I grew up, my dad's a director or an actor or something, and then we're like, yeah, I'm born to do this, or yeah, it's I'm going to end up doing it whether I try or not. Like, I'm going to have all these connections and doors will open. Not that people who come from those families always have that, but a lot of the time they do. They get encouraged and nurtured and stuff. We had the opposite, which was like, they were discouraging us by saying, you're not going to make a living, and like, how is that a career? Like, you can do it after you're done engineering, which never ends, right?
Well, I remember like one of the funny things was you were doing computer engineering with me, and then you kind of abruptly made this transition into kind of the acting world. And I remember, I don't even think you told your parents you dropped out of engineering, or you switched out of engineering into like something else altogether to pursue acting. So tell us about that, and kind of, like you were talking about, it's easier to do things when you have the people around you supporting you. But for them, it wasn't an acceptable career, and you had a lot of friction. And it kind of relates to a concept that I talk about, which is external community validation before you get internal validation within the community. So you have to be seen as this big thing outside of like, the South Asian community, for your parents to actually be like, oh yeah, my son's actually doing something worthy of me talking about to my friends.
Exactly. There's a huge perspective shift once they saw how other people perceived it outside of the community. So I did the year of engineering with you, and then in my second year, I knew that I didn't want to continue on the specialist path, because you can't just be an engineer.
Yes.
It's not some general thing where you just because you excel in math and science in high school does not mean that you have the aptitude or the desire to be a specialist, right?
Yes.
So I decided to switch into a different stream, which was business, administrative studies, as a generalist, and not with a specific focus that would then sort of soften the blow to my family in terms of where I was headed. And it gave me, so I did it in stages, kind of like, hey, I don't want to do engineering. I didn't go, I'm going to be an actor immediately. It was like, hey, I don't want to do engineering. I really want to do something else. I want to switch into a business program. I feel like if I have a business degree, I can do a bunch of other stuff. And then, that was met with a lot of resistance. So then I'm like, there's no way I can transition very quickly into telling them, by the way, that other thing that I am hoping a business degree has any relation to is acting for film and television, right? So what that did, switching from one degree to the other, or one program to the other, freed up electives that I could take in acting and filmmaking in university. And so that's kind of how I did it. I started to take acting classes inside school, outside of school, coaching and training, and started shooting my own short films, which later became a YouTube sketch channel. And so that helped me transition into acting fully by sort of getting one foot in the door while still having to balance a less intensive program at school, right? It's much easier to balance like just general business courses and then some electives that I really enjoyed in, film theory and film production and acting. and it was much easier to balance that with general business courses and electives than it would have been to balance with like electricity 301, right? Which you have to give all your focus to.
I feel like, you always talked about, with acting, it's very glamorized. Like, obviously it sounds amazing when you are successful, but every success story out there. I think we talked about who's that guy out of the UK that got the night before. What's his name?
The night of
The
Riz
night of.
Ahmed.
Yeah, and like, I only heard about him through that show, but you had told me he actually did a bunch of things like stage plays and like other stuff, and he was actually like which is a common thing in acting, which is that 10-year overnight success. And I think you're also like that. Your brother is less so like that because of your guidance, I think. But talk about that statement, and also, a concept we talked about just before this podcast, which is as an actor, you're always interviewing because any interview or audition could potentially change your life. So that's why you always have to kind of be prepared and ready for that next interview or audition. So maybe talk about those concepts a bit more.
Yeah, for sure. Riz Ahmed, one of the actors that I revere and look up to, and has an incredible success story, but it has a resume that goes back 15 years, and work that has been in film festivals and is highly regarded. Went to drama school, paid his dues, right? And would have auditioned for all kinds of things, terrorists, cab drivers, whatever, this, that, and the other. Not necessarily did those roles, but would have had to potentially turn those down and not be seen for certain projects, and then finally, finally break through based off the strength of the work he had already done, and then getting an opportunity like The Night of on HBO, which for those who don't know is a limited series on HBO with Riz Ahmed and John Turturro that won Riz Ahmed his Emmy Award for Best Actor in a limited series, right? Lead actor, I think. And that was sort of groundbreaking. The show was incredible. And that 10-year, every Hollywood success story is 10 years in the making. That's like an understatement too. We were also talking about, we were fans of Prison Break back in the day, remember? And Wentworth Miller, the lead on that show, who I think is DC's Legends, right?
Yes.
That's what he's also from. He was somebody that, like, the same deal. He had auditioned for Superman in one of those movies. And then the producer, director who auditioned him for that then was also creating Prison Break, remembered him years later, and then he got the role in that. But then when he got that role, he still had a bunch of credits on his resume that spanned them back 10 years. So it does take time. There are some people that seemingly make it overnight, but whether they sustain their careers is another story. They might burn out of the industry entirely, like somebody who's literally discovered off the street or something, or is like a musician that has put in their time and effort as an entertainer in some other stream. That all still counts. Building their popularity, understanding performance. I mean, there's a master class that's Usher teaches performance, right?
Yeah.
And he's a musician and a dancer and all that stuff, right? But he's teaching, quotes, performance. So all that stuff contributes. While it might seem like, oh, that person just made a bunch of YouTube videos, like they might have been doing it for 15 years before, like 2005, when YouTube first, with the inception of YouTube, they might have been there, right? So I totally believe in that statement, and definitely am living proof of that.
And it's such a grind because often you hear about these people after they're successful, but you're like on that path there. You've experienced success, but you don't feel like you're there where you want to be. So like, how do you keep yourself motivated when, like, you've told me about auditions where like you're one of two people that are in line for like a potentially like life-changing role, and then because of the other person's like resume, or like they've had more experience, they end up getting it because you don't have that experience yet, even though you do have experience, but not as much as they do. But it's like, it's not just once, it's been like several times you've told me. So how do you kind of keep that motivation going to keep taking these auditions and keep being optimistic that you're going to get that role that's going to be life-changing or whatever it is?
Yeah, I just start looking at it from the point of view. So every time that I have been in line for a role that seemed to be really huge and life-changing, and I didn't get it, but it went to a very established actor, somebody who is more popular or has done better work or more work or whatever it is, has received X accolades, or any other number of factors, right place at the right time, whatever it is. Looking at their journey and understanding that the same thing would have been happening to them, right? You end up being like in the top 10, then the top 5, then the top 3, then the top 2, and then you're the top choice. And I am that person to other people. So that perspective of going, oh, the roles that I just got, the ones that I just shot, all the stuff, all the work that I've done, who were the actors that were second in line or third in line in those top choices? Right. So the same thing is happening across the entire industry. It's not just working in one direction. So that perspective shift, I've seen that over time, or I've just started to realize that. And I realized, oh, okay. So the way that it naturally works is that when you are second choice or third choice for something and they go, oh, you didn't get the part, you were actually the second choice, you were the third choice. Also understanding, this has really helped, also understanding that there are numerous decision makers and I may have been the first choice for some of them, but just not a majority. So if there's 8 people in a network panel of executives and 3 of them put me as the number 1 and 5 of them put someone else as the number 1, then I become the second choice, right? If that number 1 accepts the role, then I didn't get it. If they don't accept the role, then I move into first position. So also understanding that you're in these different positions to get roles because not everyone is playing everything the same. They're going to bring something different to that job. Whereas with a lot of jobs in life, you know, say you're flipping burgers, they're not like, you're the number 2 burger flipper guy. I know you're going to bring something amazing to that burger that this guy's not going to bring. No, they want you to bring literally the exact assembly line, unless it's like gourmet burgers, right? But if it's like your fast food chain and it's like a conveyor belt, there's a level of conformity there that they are expecting, and they will choose their best candidate for whatever reason. With creative endeavors like acting, it's not cut and dry like that. So understanding that there's like an it factor that didn't work for me on X role has a just as equal amount of chance of working for me for role Y. There's just this gray area, this undefinable thing that that is always in consideration. Oh yeah, I would see that role as that person. Oh, that's an interesting twist if we hire them, you know, that kind of thing.
What made you like be so passionate about being an actor? Like, I love films and movies and stuff, but I never thought, oh, I want to be an actor. Like, what made you decide that, hey, I want to be an actor as like a living, like professionally?
Definitely shooting films in high school. Shooting. So I was in media arts, screen arts in high school, the same high school we went to, Woburn CI in Scarborough, Ontario,
Shout out to
Canada.
Scarborough.
Yeah, shout out to Scarborough. That's like only a thing that people from Scarborough say. Shout out to one of the boroughs, right? Yeah, maybe people from like the Bronx or something would say something like that.
Wait, when you were shooting these video, was that video, was that part of your thing when I had to run out the library with like 2 stolen books?
Exactly.
Okay.
So that was, see, Era I didn't even tell him what he was doing. Right? Like this is how off script we went in terms of creating these films. So I think it's incredibly important. But I wasn't a drama student, and most of the actors I meet, a lot of them say, "Oh, I went to this, performing arts high school. I took drama for 4 years in high school, and I did a bunch of plays." For me, I took screen arts, which it's not called that at every school. It's called, digital media or media arts or whatever, or film studies or something like that. That involved learning filmmaking, learning editing, learning lighting, learning camera work, learning shots, compositions, all that kind of stuff. Not to some very detailed degree, but at like a high school level. And then having to shoot short films, little scenes, and who you don't have access to actors other than the other people who are in the class with you. Or if I had anything to say, my random friends who were like on a spare period.
Yeah.
Right. And the video that Era is referencing, I don't even remember what it was, but we stole the Superman soundtrack. And
yes.
that that thing. And I just remember the part where the song crescendos and it's like, and you're like running out of the library with a whole bunch of books as if you stole them. But I think it was a little sketch, and the punchline was, we were like, Era, you stole all those books. And you're like, no, I signed out and borrowed them. Right? Like I borrowed those books. I gave them my library card. Like they were like, why were you running out of the library, dropping, and all your books were falling and everything?
I want to find that clip. Good
Yeah, we
memories.
gotta find it. It exists on VHS, so we're never gonna find that.
You know, one of the,
That putting myself in the, to answer your question more directly, putting myself in those videos as the lead and having to say the dialogue and having to act, that's what gave me a taste for it and made me realize that I, at the time, also wanted to do in front of the camera stuff. But at the time, it was sort of split. Since then, you know, in the last 15 years, I have gravitated a lot more towards acting as a primary focus, with writing as a secondary focus, and way less so as a directing or editing or cinematography or any of the other components. But that gave me the foundation for sure, and gave me that and The Matrix and Back to the Future.
This episode is sponsored by nobody. That's right, nobody. So if you could be kind enough to hit that subscribe button, that would mean a lot to me. I think one of the things that I love about film, and I think we connect on film as well. We've been to like I think you guys introduced me to the Toronto Film Festival, and now I've just been going. But what I love about film is that what sometimes you try to tell people, like sharing a message, what you can't say face to face, sometimes telling a story conveys that message even better. Like I think about American History X. I think you told me about that. You got to watch this movie. And when I watched the movie, I was blown away by like how good it was. But when I think about the current times, if you're trying to convey the message of people can change, you know, people make mistakes, they can evolve and change, you know, people might not believe it, but then they watch a movie like American History X, where you have this, you know, racist white guy that goes to prison, befriends a black guy, ends up being reformed, and then, you know, I'm not going to give away the movie, but it was like sharing that, what somebody watching that movie might believe more so in the story of redemption versus me talking about the idea of redemption. I don't know if you agree or not, but like that's one of the reasons I love film, and I plan to brainwash my kids around messages I want them to get through film instead of telling them, you know, things directly from myself. So yeah.
It's funny that you call it brainwashing, like a Clockwork Orange or something like
Yes.
that, right? I think they use the word like subversive.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Oh, that's a very subversive film. You know, like being able to. I also didn't pick up on that kind of stuff in my teens, really.
Yeah.
There are people like Quentin Tarantino who have always understood that and been doing that. You know, when they worked at a video store, and they were writing screenplays, and they've seen every movie known to man 100 times, and they understand the deeper meaning behind everything. Yes. But we can entertain and inform through cinema, through art, like with songs too. There's messages in paintings and all that kind of stuff, which I don't understand. But I don't understand any message that was ever in any painting.
Me either.
Maybe a feeling, but not necessarily like what it's trying to subvert or something.
Yeah.
But film can get there much more directly, because it's like a reflection of like what we feel like we're watching is real.
Yes.
Right. And documentaries are extremely powerful. The thing with those is we know we feel like, oh, this is real.
Yes.
And therefore it potentially not as entertaining, or in terms of like a popcorn level of entertainment where you can then have a message. And so I know you've gravitated a lot towards documentaries, but me less so. And I love documentary films, but much more informationally and less for the entertainment factor. Although there are some that are super entertaining, Super Size Me, right? Among many. But yeah, like the to be able to, I've always liked to entertain people.
Yes.
You know, and we had our little peanut gallery of jokers sitting in the back of calculus.
Yes.
To be able to do that for a living, and obviously that's a dream, right? To be able, and not as a stand-up comedian, but be able to tell stories that are also dramatic and powerful and entertain people. Entertaining doesn't necessarily mean making them laugh, although that's a big part of what I like to do.
Do you feel like the type of stories you get to tell now or be part of has been different from when you first started to, you know, like 10, it's been a long time, I don't even know how long it's been now, but when you first started to now, the kind of stories that you kind of get to participate in?
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. There's been like a big shift in casting. I've also aged into different roles, playing the very types of things that my parents would have wanted me to be, like a doctor or a lawyer. You know, I just played in the last 3 things that I shot, I played a lawyer in one, a chef in another, and a government employee in the most recent one. So yeah, these are. I'm sure my dad would be like, government salary. Yeah, that's really good, right? But I have gotten the opportunity. You know, I'm actively getting those opportunities, thankfully now, and everything that I did before, all the projects that I did before led me to this. But I don't think, when I started my career like 15 years ago, that I don't think I could have played these roles, but I don't think these roles really existed for actors of color or of a certain life experience or with disabilities or certain gender or any of that kind of stuff. Like, it was few and far between. And not to say it's perfect now, not even close, but I definitely have better opportunities and have taken advantage of that and gotten to participate in some awesome, amazing projects.
Do you think shows, like for me, one of the shows that I accidentally discovered and loved was Kim's Convenience, and obviously it's a show about an Asian family, Vietnamese family, I think. And do you think shows like this and other ones like I forgot the other one, the American version, but other shows where like Asian or like people of color who are like kind of the main actors, not just side characters, do you think that's going to kind of improve or I guess improve or increase over like the next little while, or
Absolutely, I think so. Yeah. Right now, I think they're at the stage where the filmmakers, the creators, and the writers, and the directors, and the producers, and even the actors are sort of reflecting on their parents' experience, the immigrant experience, like being that second generation, and then being first generation. I always get it wrong. We're the second, right?
We're the second, yes.
We're the second,
first,
yes. Yeah. They're and so our children being third, right?
Yes.
Their experience is going to be different, which I know you've talked about on the podcast before. And so things like, was it Fresh Off the Boat? Was that the other show?
Yes,
that
that's the show.
Yeah, I love that show with Randall Park.
Yeah.
Kim's Convenience, Fresh Off the Boat.
Blackish,
exactly. And Never Have I Ever.
Yes.
Like, these fantastic shows. They have immigrant families and their kids, and seeing that multi-generational arc that all the characters go through over the course of many seasons, and what they experience and who they become. That I think we're going to see more of that, and I'd love to see more of that. And then I think it will evolve into the experience of the next generation, which is just being part of society and already having been used to seeing those kind of shows and seeing them, like, sort of in quotes, seeing themselves on screen, people with the same life experience as them, or similar life experience, sorry. Two people have this exact same life experience. So I've always found that to be a bit of a strange phrase, like to see myself on screen, because just because somebody has the same skin color as me doesn't mean I'm seeing myself on screen.
Yes.
Right. Like, I related a lot more to Marty McFly in Back to the Future than I did to Gandhi.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
I did not have the life experience. My life is very cushy compared to Mohandas Gandhi. Right.
Yeah.
So that I wanted to make that distinction right there. But I'm looking forward to seeing more shows that capture that multi-generational difference in immigrant experience versus being born in North America or Europe, and then seeing how the next generation, what would be like a colorblind show, what would be somebody rediscovering their roots, what would the next thing that has multi-generations look like? Like, do we have like sort of a half immigrant experience because of our parents, because of the things they tried to instill in us, like all the things that they wanted for us? Because doctor, lawyer, engineer is like, that's not going to be a thing for the next generation.
Yes.
Unless we're feeling very mean spirited for no reason, right?
No, that's true. Another statement I think I've heard you say, or maybe I've just seen it, is, I don't know if it existed pre-COVID or if it's after COVID even more, but do you think the road to success as an actor is do you think it still goes through Hollywood, or do you think you can still be successful as an actor not being based in Hollywood? Like I look at Drake, who typically you have to go to LA to be big in music, but he made it from Toronto. Do you think the same theory could potentially hold as a potential actor based in Toronto?
Yeah, definitely. I think so. Looking at even The Weeknd, like Drake and The Weeknd, and then looking at like Stephen James, Shamir Anderson, big actors coming out of Toronto, and then he like Rachel McAdams, Ryan Gosling, Ryan Reynolds from Vancouver. Uh, Seeing a lot of those people, they did have to go through LA, but I think this newer crop of performers and creatives can come from anywhere, because there's more content now and it's more diverse, and not diverse just meaning race, but in terms of nation, region, time period, all that kind of stuff. And so thankfully, I don't think it's like Hollywood dominates anymore. In fact, in terms of levels of film production, like in terms of numbers, I think Atlanta is higher than LA. And I'm pretty sure Vancouver is the same or higher, and Toronto too. And Sydney, Australia is way up there, right? So there's movie industries that have become far more popular all over the world, like with production, even English language production or whatever native language of that country, and those films then become foreign films. Like Korean cinema it was like a niche thing, and then now,
Parasite.
yeah, Parasite has just it's making people discover that, whereas it was I'm sure there are people who were like very protective of it, going like, I was into Korean cinema way before Parasite, man. And that's one point of view. The other point of view is, wow, we don't even like, it can win Best Picture, not even just Best Foreign Film. So I definitely don't think that LA is like this place you have to go anymore.
And that's a kind of a great segue into kind of, what you've built out with your business, The Online Actor, which is the idea of teaching actors, and location is not an issue. You can, you have, clients or potential actors from like Ireland, Australia, or like, I think you have different cities all over the world, which is pretty amazing. So tell us a bit about kind of how the Online Actor kind of concept came about, and kind of what you do, and yeah, how it's going.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that. I'm really excited because it's 10 years in the making. It actually is. Now that I think about it. So my wife Marina and I, Marina's also an actress, and she and a filmmaker, and we had this idea literally 10 years ago for, at the time, what we called directors acting school, because I was directing a lot. So it was to teach actors from the point of view of a director, like a very practical way of essentially screen acting, on camera acting. And it was at a time where I was directing a lot of short films, and that didn't come to fruition, but it went through different iterations. And I still remember having, the domain has since expired, but directorsactingschool.com. I'm sure somebody else will take that after this podcast, right? They're like going to squat on that domain and sit on it and try to sell it back to me. But transitioning to online in the last, even before COVID, started to become a thing. Teaching online, learning online. I've taken online courses in editing and sound design and all kinds of stuff, and color correction and stuff for my own filmmaking. And I've done all of that online. I've learned directing online, cinematography online. So I thought, why not leverage all of our acting experience collectively between Marina and me into coaching actors around the world online. And that's what the Online Actor is. So theonlineactor.com is what we came up with. And the Online Actor is basically meant to represent, that name represents everyone pursuing acting now, because everyone's online, with very few exceptions. Thank you. And I remember running the name by you, and you're like, great name. And then I'm like, cool, I'm going to get there's very little that I have done in my career that hasn't been run by Era first. So a little bit of accountability coaching going on, right? So yeah, the online actor has really taken off, and we've been happy to be able to, I'll be coaching people in between being on set and things like that, and we've done workshops and classes, and we're going to do intensives in different cities and all that kind of stuff. And it's pretty amazing. Like I had a class that at the same time I had actors from LA, Vancouver, Chicago, Toronto, Baltimore, Dublin, Ireland, Belfast, Northern Ireland, London, England, UK, and Paris and Mongolia.
Crazy.
And
Mongolia.
Australia and New Zealand, like all in potentially in the same span of 6 hours over Zoom online, all training together with seemingly like perfect internet connections. I've had trained actors and coached actors like who say they're in a village and they have like LTE speed, everything. So the technology is extremely accessible now, and it's incredible to see people putting up scenes and playing scenes together and hearing each other's accents and realizing that there's a diversity in that too, in their life experience, in how they approach acting, in how they speak, all that kind of stuff, which I never got to experience as an actor coming up in Toronto primarily.
In your dream life, how does the acting and the online actor kind of fit all together?
Ideally, those two can exist in harmony, in parallel. My dream career is writing and producing and acting in my own films, and I have a writing team that I work with where they're trying to make that happen. Would be similar to a Seth Rogen career trajectory. And yeah, if the online actor, if I can continue to coach actors or have that just be something that I spearhead, and pass along a lot of the stuff that I've learned and that I actively learned from being a working actor, that would be ideal to have those two. That would be fabulous to have those two exist all together as part of the dream career.
You mentioned like through this, the span of kind of becoming an actor, you've had obviously some challenges and obviously some great wins as well. So what's kind of a failure that you've experienced in like the last 3 to 5 years that you've learned a lot from?
So this is an awesome question. I was thinking about this recently. So I co-wrote a comedy pilot script with a great friend of mine, also a fellow actor and writer. And we co-wrote this comedy pilot script based loosely on our life experience of becoming actors, switching from other careers. It's very common with South Asian creatives to have started in another career, and then try to transition to another one, and then be met with resistance from the external community, and then the internal community, and then I have to get acceptance from the external community first, and then have the internal community still fight you, and then finally accept you once you achieve like a certain threshold. But that pilot script, we had very high hopes for that, and we got it to networks. We took it through a bunch of meetings. We even won a writing award for it, or we were acknowledged by the Writers Guild, and we got very close to it. And it hasn't been made yet, hasn't been bought or licensed, or it hasn't been optioned yet, as we say in the industry. And we backed off of it for a little bit because we learned so much from it that we immediately jumped on other projects. And we looked at that as a bit of an experiment, because it still ends up being a calling card of sorts, and hasn't even been that long, just a couple of years. And we've read stories of other actors and other writers and creators, where when their second or third or fourth or fifth idea gets picked up, they invariably ask you, what else you got? And then you can go, well, I have this script, actually. You're the first to see it, right? And you tell that huge lie when in fact you've shown it to every network and it just wasn't a fit. It wasn't the right time. It wasn't, or it wasn't up to the standard of what we're creating now, right? So that can be viewed as a failed project. But I've learned to look at it like, oh, that's my business card. Right? That's part of my portfolio. That's a piece of demo material. Like, it never made it to air, but I still have it. Not literally like the footage from it, but looking at the script, it's a sample, it's a blueprint. It's like an architect showing plans for some incredible building structure that never got built, and having other people realize what you're capable of creatively.
I feel like I've heard a few examples of this. I thought maybe after Moonlight, the same director got another film that was like, he had created something 3 or 4 years before. I forgot if that was one or if it was Get Out, but that definitely makes sense to me.
It might be, it might be Get Out. It might be the movie Us, perhaps.
Okay.
Jordan Peele. I'm not sure if that was one that he.
I remember you telling me a story about, like, they loved, like, this first one was whoever the director was, their first thing was a hit, and then they asked that question which you kind of just described, what else you got, and then they made the second one just because of the popularity of the first project. So if we can remember that, we'll come back to that. But did you know that every time you left a 5 out of 5 review for this podcast, a Tamil parent lets their child pursue a career in the creative arts? Okay, that's probably not true, but if there's a chance that it is, do you really want to jinx it? Leave a review. Do it for the young creative in you. What do you like to, your life seems fun, I know it's a lot of work, but what do you like to do for fun outside of all that you do in terms of the online actor and like your acting career? What do you like to, how do you like to unwind?
Definitely like to just hang out. Totally do less than nothing. Just literally like
what's less than nothing.
There's people that will say, oh, I love to mountain bike or do whitewater rapids, rafting, and mountain climbing and all this kind of stuff. But for me, being on set is exciting, and directing and acting and auditioning and all that stuff. Like, there's a lot of nerves and adrenaline and excitement and energy that goes into that, and being an entrepreneur and creating your own business and seeing other people succeed, coaching actors and things like that. So I then like to just watch movies. I like to go
fall asleep while getting a massage.
Yeah, exactly. just get neck treatments and back treatments and relax for sure, and just have drinks and just like be in the great outdoors, but not participating in the great outdoors. Just sitting with my feet in the water, like just hanging out on a lawn chair somewhere, watching a view, not like hang gliding to get close to the sun or whatever.
Makes sense.
I feel like I'm describing ridiculous people that are into extreme sports.
I'm the same way. I'm the same way during the day, when it's like people love being out during the sun. I think I told you, even on vacation, between the hours of 6 or like 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., I will enjoy looking at the sun, but I will not go out to the sun.
First of all, you should never look at the sun.
Yes, not at the sun.
You mean the sky, right?
Yes.
Or I guess the sunlight.
The sunlight.
Yes. Era knows we have this, we troll each other.
Yes.
A lot.
Usually I get trolled.
Era gets trolled. Era's such a good sport that everyone knows that they can get their zingers in.
Well, we have a tribe when it's not just me and Vas. We have a third member, Ahmed, part of the Trois Amigos, and usually Ahmed and Vas have I'm usually the one getting trolled, but it's good. It's all in good fun.
Yeah, we have a group WhatsApp chat where we're always just like finding old pictures of Era and posting them.
When I was Tamil Nully and
Era. Oh my gosh!
Remember when? You remember I was in a quick. I feel like you have so many funny stories or like memories, but I found the picture when I used to have long hair, and I just remember that story when Vas taught me how to work out, and I remember bench pressing the bar, which was I think 45 pounds at the time, thinking it was the greatest accomplishment of life. And I think I felt so great that there was another person we knew, and I felt this high of like from the working out. I engaged in kind of like clay fighting with this guy, and I I think what turned from me working out and bench pressing the bar into me getting suspended in school for like 2 days for play fighting with this guy. I still blame Boss for that, but it's still a good memory though.
That was pretty hilarious. How Era when you first, and Era's 3 times my size, so the fact that I had to teach him how to lift weights is kind of hilarious. But to add to that, those events happened immediately back to back. Like
It's actually like a fact,
it
yes.
was like weightlifting in gym class. He lifts the bar, the 45-pound bar. He goes, "I'm an animal," and we're like, "You're an animal." And then he just goes and starts roughhousing with like another one of our friends who's like 3 times our size, 4 times my size, and like twice Era's size, and then like just immediately gets in trouble with with the teacher and the entire school board. I'm
I,
guessing.
yeah, I got like an insult. I think that was my first in school, like first time ever getting suspended. I got all the way through high school except OAC. I think it was like the second half of the year, and this guy got me
Yeah, but it
suspended.
was an in school. It was an in school, and they knew you were like one of the top students, and
Yes,
they're like, okay, this guy just it definitely wasn't him who came up with this idea. They knew that. They knew there was other culprits.
but that's an example of Voz's
Yeah,
influence.
yeah, and I was definitely instigating.
Did-
That was me coaching you. I was your
that the
personal. I was your personal trainer.
the learning experience I got from that was I ever since Voz got me into like training and fitness, I've got into better shape. I lost like 30 pounds after that in that summer. But the other thing I learned from that is also not to take Voz's baiting into troublesome situations. Uh, so that's kind of the other lesson, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I definitely, our entire group of friends in high school were definitely guilty of doing that to each other,
Yes.
like daring each other to do something. Yeah, you could totally do that, and get away with it or something. And as we aged and became adults, we realized there are certain people that will still do that, and those
Yeah.
people get arrested for you know for doing stuff. So yeah, we completely went in the opposite direction from
I feel
that.
like Boz knows I feel like over the years, maybe it's like just maturing or like being married and all that, that the version, the unfiltered version myself, I felt like I did all these crazy things, or at least crazy at that time. But now I'm just so risk adverse. I don't do anything that's crazy. I'm so, I guess, docile is probably the right word.
That's good. I mean, people who look at the sun, they've experienced so much in their life that you know that's all that they can bring themselves to do now, because they've experienced everything that needs to be
Yes.
done. And what is there to do after that other than look at the sun?
So going back to kind of the podcast around, what's an insecurity that you have, Buzz?
Let's see. Just one.
Just one.
uh, Definitely that whether or not I will continue to get opportunities,
Hmm.
right? Because it can be, the entire industry almost shut down
Yep.
because of COVID-19. So that a lot of people are dealing with that, and I was definitely dealing with that. Going, hey, is the entire thing that I want to do like non-existent now? Is it only selling masks that can make you a living? Right.
Yeah.
And so yeah, definite huge insecurity of mine is whether in my lifetime the things that I like to pursue will still even exist.
In terms of your personal legacy, how would you want your friends and family to remember you?
Definitely want them to remember me as someone with a sense of humor, that that made a difference in some way, even if that difference was entertaining them. When people reflect on someone and they're just like smiling and laughing when they think of that person,
Hmm.
that's definitely how I would want to be remembered. In terms of a legacy, I'd love to leave behind stories and ideas and films and books and theories, whether it's on acting or life or a memoir or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
even if it's just how to work out and lift more than 45 pounds book, ghost written by me, but with Era's name on the title. Yeah, like I think having look, the legacies that have stood the test of time are those things that are tangible.
Mhm.
Right? I don't know if Instagram videos and stuff like that are gonna be a legacy. Like, we're gonna look at those things and be like, what is this weird vertical tiny little low res video that we used to like?
Yeah.
Right? When you can blow up a print of a 35 millimeter film from 80 years ago and you can remaster it and you can project it in front of an audience who can still enjoy it.
That's a good point.
Right? And people are every day are looking up uh, past works of music and art. So leaving behind something, ideally films, I think, or television series or something like that, as an actor, but also as a creator, as a writer or producer or something like that, would be incredible legacy to leave behind.
If you had a chance to go back in a time machine and talk to 16-year-old Vas, what would you tell him?
I would tell him he's going to meet his match soon in the dude named Era, right? I think that was pretty much the age when we met, right?
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
physics and
I would
gifted
tell
physics.
myself to. I mean, everything that everyone's journey is different, and I am where I am in my creative journey of art and entrepreneurship because of when I started. But I would probably tell myself to just go for it sooner, right? Because I would have just enjoyed doing it sooner. I know, like, there was trials and tribulations with having to approach it the way that I did by studying something else and then sort of transitioning into it and all that kind of stuff. But I would tell myself, like, hey, this is a real thing, right? You're going to like this for a really long time. And so just start now.
Um, this question, when I was thinking about it, I actually never asked you when you were younger because I never actually noticed the difference. But talking to other Indian Tamil folks that I know, whenever people talk about Toronto Tamils, they always refer to mainly the Sri Lankan Tamil community. But there's such a different experience from that group because the predominant topic's always the war. And you obviously grew up like, oh, your family's Indian Tamil. So how was your experience with the kind of the Toronto Tamil community based on that subtle but I guess big difference in like kind of your life experience with like what you talk about? So how did that impact kind of how you interacted with the community on a personal and professional level?
The Indian Tamil experience to me is very much one that to me feels much more generically Indian and South Asian than the Sri Lankan Tamil experience that I've learned firsthand from friends such as yourself. It was when I watch a movie and I you see an Indian person or an Indian family, I definitely relate directly to that, being having my parents being Indian, even though they are Tamil, from India. And so the community that I was part of was Tamil, but it was an Indian Tamil community that did include some families that were from other parts of South India. So there's a South Indian experience. There's that includes people who speak Malayali and Telugu and that kind of thing. So a couple other languages that have some similarities, and there's similarities in the culture and the food and climate and all that kind of stuff. But it was unique because I had things in common with Sri Lankan Tamil people and many things in common with Indian people from Indo-Canadians and people from India, from all over India, and so I think I was like sort of right in the middle in terms of being able to relate with all those communities.
Mm.
And so what I saw was, it was a little bit different because my experience with spoken Tamil is very light. I have videos. I could speak Tamil as a child, and then by not practicing Tamil, I lost it essentially, and I can sort of get it back phonetically or get it back by asking my family to, what does that mean again? How do you say that word again? And then it sort of kicks in. But I always had that disconnect in terms of the way Tamil is spoken in South India is very different from how it's spoken in Sri Lanka. The way it's written, I think, is identical, but the way it's spoken casually is very different. And so that was always kind of jarring for me because I couldn't understand Tamil in the way that I wanted to. And one thing that I did notice is the community that I grew up with of people who were Tamil from India, most of us were born, like my generation, were born in Canada. Whereas the experience that I noticed, a lot of Tamil Canadians from Sri Lanka who are in the same cohort, many of them were born in Sri Lanka. So there was that difference as well, in terms of like, we had not seen the world or any other part of the world. We were very much like from Scarborough or Markham or whatever, with you know, that kind of Mississauga. There was no like, oh, I was in Colombo and then I was here.
Yeah.
And I traveled thousands of miles to get here, and I know what another part of the world looks like.
Interesting. I never thought of that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What's like a recent, like a new belief, behavior, or habit that you've taken on that's improved your life?
A belief or habit or behavior, I think coaching, absolutely. Yeah, like teaching and coaching, and it's taught me to listen more, I think, because to coach someone or teach them or pass on information to them, you have to know where they're at and what they're looking for.
Okay.
Rather than just presenting. There's lecturing and then there's teaching and coaching, right? There's overlap, but they're different. I think getting into coaching has definitely enriched my overall life, aside from acting itself.
What's like a favorite book or podcast of yours that you like consumed recently that's had an impact on you?
I feel like the first thing that everyone wants to say is the Tamil Creator podcast, but then they stop themselves because then they're like, how many other people have said that? And how many of those people are best friends with the Tamil Creator himself? We can definitely rank this podcast up there, but there's one called Box Angeles, and I love that podcast. And there's a dude named Mike Elder, and his nickname is Box Elder, like the tree or plant, I think. And it's boxangeles.com, I think. And it's an amazing podcast. It's about acting and filmmaking. And it's interviews with creatives, similar to what you do, but a lot of interviews with actors, directors, casting directors, and lots of industry insight, which I found super eye-opening.
Who's somebody from the global Tamil community? It could be anybody that you admire and why. And the second part of that is who's somebody that isn't, but somebody that's non-Tamil that you admire and why.
Immediately, global Tamil community, immediately got to go to Mindy Kaling, right? Just repping, repping all of us in the comedy space, in the filmmaking space, in the writing space, in the acting space, all that stuff. Definitely been a fan of hers for a long time, across all media, and always sort of viewed her as an idol. It'd be awesome to work with her at some point, but until then, just watching all the stuff that she creates, because it's pretty incredible. I gotta go with Denzel. I know that's he's one of your top two, but Denzel, just like, there's no bad Denzel movie. There's no, like, just charisma through the roof. You revisit you turn on the TV and you see John Q or Pelican Brief or anything, right? And then Malcolm X, Hurricane, whatever, and just like entertainment value, incredible acting and performance, inspirational all the time. And then, John David Washington starting to get up there too.
Yeah, John, like you said, Denzel is one of the few actors that, like, I want to see any movie that he's in, and like John Q, Man on Fire, all that stuff, amazing. So I
Oh, I
agree.
gotta revisit that, Man on Fire. You just
Man on
reminded
Fire
me.
is so.
Yeah, you just reminded me. I
What
think
was
I've only seen it twice
what did they call him?
across the last 20 years. So
Greasy Bear or Q, whatever his nickname was in that. Yeah, such a
I
good
gotta
movie.
I gotta watch it again. Yeah, I gotta go right now. Watch it again.
Money can be hard to come by, but here's a $100 opportunity for you. Join my free newsletter for free exclusive content and a free chance to win $100 when I hold special draws. Did I mention that it's free? Well, that's kind of a good segue into kind of the final kind of segment of the podcast. It's a game that I like to call Creator Confessions. It's meant to be a speed round. I'm going to say a bunch of statements. You tell me the first thought that kind of comes to mind. Ready?
Yeah, ready.
Awesome. Favorite Tamil food?
Kotaroti, of course. I can't handle it though. It's too spicy. But I gotta say that I could go with something generic like samosas and stuff, but it's not Tamil food, right? It's just South Asian Indian food. Yeah, kotaroti, which I can't handle the spice level of.
Something that scares you?
The dark ocean water of the Pacific Ocean, the sharks. Yeah, for sure.
Favorite show that you're watching?
What am I watching right now? Mythic Quest on Apple TV. Really funny comedy.
A place that you're itching to travel to after the pandemic is over?
Definitely Australia. Yeah, Sydney, Australia. Like always wanted to go to Australia. You've been, right? Have you been?
Never been to Australia.
Never
Claudia
been?
has been, but I've never been.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Definitely want to go.
Fellow Tamil creator that you want to give a shout out to?
Let's see. Fellow Tamil creator. Got to give a shout out to Kumada Ramanathan.
Yes.
She's doing big things. And Nimal. Always got to throw Nimal in there. Her better half. Yeah.
Favorite childhood memory?
Favorite. Okay, so I think, I don't know. I remember being introduced on like my first day of kindergarten, senior kindergarten. So it wasn't even like my first day of school. I just remember being introduced on that day, and I thought it was going to be scary. That's not even my favorite memory. This is my first memory, actually. In terms of favorite, I don't have anything particular. Oh yeah, you know what? There was a day, Canada Day, and I was probably under 10 years old, and I was like learning how to rollerblade and try to play roller hockey at the same time on the first day of learning how to rollerblade. And it was Canada Day, and on my street, one of our neighbors had basically blocked off the street from traffic. And it was a side street. There wasn't much traffic, but she was able to like get the city to approve like putting this barrier and all these cones and stuff, and no traffic was allowed on the street. And then the fireworks were literally happening on the road in the middle of the street and everything. I don't know if any of that can be done anymore.
Probably not.
Yeah, exactly. And barbecue happening on the street.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. It was a block party. That's what I'm describing, a block party.
Which don't really happen anymore.
Yeah. Not here.
Favorite film of all time?
The Dark Knight. Absolutely. Yeah, my favorite. I think it's 2009, so it's not even that old. But yeah, that's my number one, The Dark Knight. Before that, I would have said Back to the Future. One tie between 1 and 2.
Again, I think you introduced me to that Batman series because you told me to watch Batman Begins, and I got Claudia to watch it. She was so against it. Then she watched it. She's like, "This is amazing."
Because the idea that Batman just got so ridiculous by the time it hit George Clooney and Arnold Schwarzenegger that I think no one thought they could make another good Batman movie. And they might have, you know what? They might have set in motion the whole idea of like rebooting every single franchise.
Yes, because it did
Uh,
so well.
yeah, and it's being, it's been rebooted since then with Affleck. It wasn't as good, and that movie just holds up. The Dark Knight, just unbelievable.
I think I like um the third part of the film when they maybe it was the second part when Alfred talks about the story of the bandit who kind of wanted to take over the island. He's like,
Yep.
how did they take over the island? They burned the boats or something.
Yeah,
And
I
that's one of
remember
my
that.
favorite kind of
Oh
sayings
yeah.
because it's like, I mean, I don't necessarily believe it all the time, but sometimes when you have no plan B, you have to like kind of make
Yep.
whatever you have in front of you work. And I think the second part is like that music when he was escaping from the prison and like just like whatever there's what was it? I don't know what the music was, but they're just chanting and that music like who's the composer? Was it Hans Zimmer?
Hans Zimmer. Yeah.
Yeah, his music is in all his movies is ridiculous. Like I get chills thinking about that music. But
Oh, it's amazing. It's
um,
amazing.
what's a pet peeve of yours?
People driving through stop signs and then stopping after the stop sign. So they like they sort of like hug the corner. They go past the stop sign and then overlap where the people would be walking
Yeah,
and stop there. By then it's too late. They would have hit somebody.
yeah.
And then they look left and right and then continue. So yeah, that's a huge pet peeve.
A person or celebrity that you look up to?
We talked about him, Riz Ahmed.
Riz Ahmed.
Yeah, definitely look up to him. Even if he's like the same age,
Yeah.
but just the work that he's doing is just amazing. Oscar nominated, Emmy winning.
Sound of Metal. I want to see
Yeah.
that. Looks
Oh,
really
that
good.
movie's so good.
If you knew that you were going to die tomorrow, a regret that you would have.
I think not traveling more.
Hmm.
More variety of places. Not necessarily what I would do in those places, just literally seeing them for myself. So it's not like I want to go underwater into the coral reef and all that stuff, but it's like, yeah, I just want to
go
be
there.
there. You just want to just be there and look at the sun. Yeah, that's going to be a common theme through. Going to contact every one of the next guests and be like, hey, talk about looking directly into the sun.
Actually, Claudia's dad actually made her and her brother look at the sun to strengthen their eyes or something.
Oh my gosh. Are you kidding?
I don't know if she was joking or if it's serious.
Yeah, that sounds like an exaggeration that I would do. So I'm pretty proud. If she's exaggerating that, I'm pretty proud of her.
If she hears this, she'll love it. Yeah. Celebrity whose life you'd want to experience for one day.
For one day, probably Tom Cruise, just to see like what
Scientology's like.
Definitely not that aspect of it. Maybe just to get a little bit of insight into that too.
Yeah.
But I feel like that kind of scares me a little. But to see what kind of like machine he runs, because in terms of like he's always shooting a Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
He's always on location shooting something to do with Mission Impossible. Okay. Right. And so just to see like how many people are involved with keeping it private and keeping what he's doing public as well. And involved in the production in terms of like what does he do, or maybe Will Smith by that same token, because Will Smith produces as well, is a producer on a lot of his own projects and things like that too. So to see like what is it like being Will Smith, that's probably a better choice because there's no Scientology involved, right? But what is it like being Will Smith and being in all these amazing projects, but then you're producing and you're dealing with other aspects of the industry that I think would be eye-opening to see. And then, seeing what the family's like and all, like family, like how he would balance all that family life, shooting, producing, and just being like beloved by the whole world.
Or like Mark Wahlberg, where he has like, have you seen Mark Wahlberg's schedule? It's like wake up at 4.
Marina and I laugh at it all the time. Like he plays golf
for 2 hours.
He's debunked it. He's like, I don't. And then the 1.5 hour shower.
Yeah.
He's like,
or I like don't. Or he's like in the cryo chamber for like an hour or 2 or something.
Yeah, waking up at 2 a.m.
That's insane.
That is wild.
And And finally, like a public service announcement you want to leave with the audience, like whether it's like just advice for creators, advice for fellow aspiring actors out there, just what do you want to leave with them?
Uh, I leave them with a quote from, I don't even know if I'll get it right, but from The Social Network, uh, Timberlake's character saying, "This is our time." Right? He just keeps saying it. This is our time. He says it numerous times. But that's a simple phrase that it's your time. It's our time to do things, to get stuff done, to create things. People are looking at us to create things and they're listening. So we should do it. We should do it now instead of taking 10 years to learn how to do something and then doing it. And then you do it and then they're like, it's not your time, man. Your time's passed. This is our time at that point. The next generation is like, this is our time, bro.
Before we kind of get to the final wrap up, maybe since you haven't told one entertaining story, the story that always gets the laughs is tell the story of how you've interacted with my brother Deepan over the purchase of his guitar, and then we'll kind of wrap it up.
Yes. So Deepan Amperam, legendary.
Describe everything. His shirt.
Younger brother of Era. I used to frequent Era's childhood home when we were teenagers, and Deepan was a young teenager at the time. He would be 9th grade, and we would have been in 12th probably. And incredible story from that day where I showed up to Era's house, and one of my shoes just went missing. And it turns out some kid that was like visiting, I don't even know if it was a cousin or some friend of the family, just took one of my shoes. And I just remember like flipping out, going like, what the hell, where's my shoe? Right? And then they're like, I think that kid took it. And then they're like, I'm like, did he steal it? And they're like, no, he's wearing it. Like he wore one of my size 9 shoes and one of his like size 1, like just like a 6-year-old kid, right? But that has nothing to do with Deepan. So Deepan, or Deebs as we call him, had a classical flamenco guitar that he sold me for some change because I kept. He asked me, how much do you think I could get for this guitar? And I said, I'll give you $30 right now. And he's like, sold, right? And then I just started pulling change out of my pocket, and I don't think I got past $12. I was like, wait, here's 10. Oh wait, 10.25, 10.50, 10.75, and he just started going, just go, just go, just go. He just kept saying, just go, just go, just go. And I was like, okay, all right. Like he was just like, I can't take it anymore. I'm like, wait, 11.25, 11.50, and I'm like counting quarters. Just take it and go, just go, right? He just kept saying it in this like weird, like just singing it, basically. He just kept singing it.
I always found that story funny because my parents, I think, bought my brother a guitar for $200, and this guy sold it to Vas for basically pocket change.
Yeah, he sold it to me for change, and I had no clue that he bought it for $200
or something like that.
I wasn't trying to scam him. I just knew from buying and selling old guitars that typically when you buy it off someone, you pay like a fraction, you pay like 1/4 of like what it's worth. And then you turn around and sell it for like double or triple. So I was probably like, I could buy this for 30 and sell it for 90. Right? Or if I buy it for 30, it's worth $90, you know?
Yeah. Well, he wasn't going to use it anyway. So
yeah, he was like, there was a crack in it and there was a hole in it or something. And he didn't know how to play it. He was like playing it upside down. Right. Yeah. It was one of those boiling hot summer days where he's just walking around shirtless.
Yes.
All the time.
That's the key part of it.
And then he was using that Body by Jake workout system.
Yes.
Which is like some strange contraption that by today's standards would just fall apart like the second you try to lift it. That was definitely memorable. And then I went home with one shoe but I got a guitar, so maybe it evens out.
It evens out.
Yeah, and I kept that guitar for a really long time. I actually sold it a couple of years ago.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. I sold it too. I just had I had like a couple of guitars, and that one was kind of falling apart even more.
So I know Deepan listens to this podcast. So Deepan, this mini story was for you.
Yeah, Deepan. Shout out to Deepan. And actually, I didn't sell it. I gave it away. I traded it for something. I can't remember what, like a digital drum set. I traded like 4 guitars or whatever for a MIDI keyboard or something. So I did not sell it. And I owe you I owe you for the rest of that guitar lead band.
He owes you $189.75.
Yeah, I'll start counting the change, and he'll be like, "Just go, just get out of here, just leave." Yeah.
Well, for anybody kind of listening, and they loved your story, they're a prospective actor, what's kind of the best way for them to kind of connect with you? Is it kind of the online actor? Is it with like LinkedIn? Like, what's the best way to reach you?
Let's go with Instagram at Vas_Saranga. Or Vas, as Era says, which he's the only one I allow to call me that.
Vas.
Vas, because then that's the same as a vase.
Yes.
Right? It is. Somehow you made my name into a better version of vase.
Yes.
Which is wrong.
I never realized I said your name so differently from everyone else.
Yeah. Actually, you say it kind of close to my dad.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's quite a character himself.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a little bit reminiscent of him. At Vas_Saranga.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Vas, for kind of hopping on and kind of, you're super busy managing kind of your acting and your entrepreneurial kind of life. And, thank you for everyone for, listening to another episode, and hope you enjoyed it, and on to the next one.
Thank you, Era. This was a awesome episode. Really, really great time catching up, being able to do this. I love that you put this podcast together. And let's promote the heck out of it, because people need to hear this.